I feel like I'm on NPR.
Good morning from Washington, D.C.
This is the kind of thing that really gets me excited.
And we're live. Welcome to Comp and Coffee. I'm Sean Lavana.
And I'm Katie Rosa.
And today we have a special guest, Katie.
We do. We have William Coleman.
Ooh, the William part's going to get him. The William part will get him. We have Bill Coleman here.
Bill is COO of Payfactors, and he is a nationally recognized comp and HR expert, so we're really excited to have him on. He's been cited in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, NBC Nightly News, the Today Show, lots of leading media organizations.
And we brought Bill today to talk about, there's been a really interesting topic going on lately, and it's come up in a couple of different ways. The one that we want to start with today was a New York Times article, and it was, where did your pay raise go? It may have become a bonus. And this came out last month. And what it talks about is a trend that's happening in compensation. There's a lot going on right now in pay for performance. A lot of companies are looking for more flexibility. And so they're not giving those pay raises. They're giving bonuses instead. So we wanted to bring Bill on to chat about that.
By the way, we're going to link the article in the show notes. So if you haven't read it, you can find it in the notes and give it a read.
Just to quickly recap this article, what it talks about is that it draws the trend of employers that are starting to incentivize employees with regular bonus payments instead of giving them the raises that everybody was used to historically. So, Bill, let me start with that. Why is this happening?
I think there are a few reasons why it's happening. I mean, the big one is it gives companies more flexibility. When they are doing well, they can pay people more. When they're not doing as well, they don't have to pay as much. And a salary is generally considered an entitlement. So once you give someone a raise, it's very hard as an employer to take it away. But if you keep salaries increasing at a slower rate and you use pay for performance or any other kind of variable pay, that pay can track with business performance, with the company's ability to pay.
And so that you're getting at one of the things that we've seen now happening in a big way, which is that the average raise today that an employee can expect is about 3%. And we see that in our own survey data, but that's just generally, you see that across everywhere. It's about 2.9 to 3% in every industry for almost every role.
And it's been that way for probably the past 10 years or so.
Exactly. It's been that way since 2008 specifically. So from 2000 to 2008, it was 4.4% that average. And now that's come down since, quote unquote, the Great Recession, right? And so is that one of those effects where at the time going into the recession, employers were used to, and historically it was even higher than that, right? So,
yes, absolutely.
So they got used to, hey, people will stay for this kind of raise, and then we can incentivize this otherwise. Is that what's happening here? Is that why we're not seeing wage growth?
I think that what you're seeing is companies responding to economic realities. In the early part of the Great Recession, companies didn't have the money to pay and stopped increasing salaries. But then they found that they needed to pay people, select people more to keep them on board. Those people were getting bonuses or other kinds of incentives. And that model had taught corporate America to think differently about how they pay people, how they measure people's performance, and how they reward people for that performance.
How do you think employees are reacting to this, though? Because if we hear continually that the reason comp exists and the reason HR exists is to help attract and retain the best. You want the best people at your organization. And what we're doing is we're bucking a historical trend and saying that we will pay you, but it's not guaranteed. I mean, how does this seem to go over maybe on the employee side of things?
I think the change has been a little bit more gradual, because what happened with the employees when companies stopped giving large increases in base pay, and that goes back into the 90s when that habit slowed down. Employees got used to it, one, because it was generally a result of economic hard times, so people were, the saying at the time was, just happy to have a job. Mm-hmm. And so people got comfortable with the idea that salaries aren't going to keep increasing at 5, 8, 10% a year. And those who were getting bonuses were very happy to get that. It's a surprise, and it's a lump sum of money, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point here, what's the difference between an increase in your salary and a bonus? And there's a psychological difference when you get one check with a big number on it versus that amount doled out, 52 times a year or 26 times or however many cycles you have.
Let's pause and go into that for a minute, because what you're talking about is, one of the other recent trends that we've seen is because of the tax cuts that were passed recently. A lot of companies are jumping on, I'll say it honestly, the PR bandwagon to basically say, hey, we're paying all of our employees that have been around for 20 years $1,000 bonus. And there's all these kind of stipulations that go into that. That equals about $20 a week, but they're giving it a one-time $1,000 bonus, right? So talk about that. What are the psychological ramifications there?
Well, the psychological ramifications are pretty obvious to anybody that's ever been on either end of this kind of transaction. Is a check for $1,000 is $1,000 in your hand versus $20 a week is, as some people would say, it's, not even what you would pay for, coffee on your way to work every day.
Especially once taxes are included,
right,
and everything else.
Exactly, but it is technically the same amount of money. And then, some will point out that a salary increase sticks with you forever. And I think it compounds. And even if, I was looking at some numbers, even if you just get that salary increase once, that can have a pretty dramatic effect on your earnings, lifetime earnings. And by the time you retire, that one time, raising your salary $1,000 one year could actually be worth $50,000 to $100,000 in total income over your career. The $1,000 bonus is $1,000 bonus. You get it once and it's done. You may put it in the bank and get interest, but then it's by the time you retire, it's $2,000.
I was going to say, so you should invest it.
Right.
Is what we're saying here.
Right.
You shouldn't go spend it and treat it like a bonus. You should invest it. So let me ask that though: are companies sacrificing talent by giving a 3% increase every year at best, and then giving a bonus when it's available, and then somebody can go to another company, get paid more, and still have that upside? Is it, if we're saying we're in a war for talent, is this the best way to fight it?
I have a question to add to that question as well. What about promotions and the increase that you see with a promotion?
I mean, typically that 3% number is really just about people staying in the same job. It doesn't include promotions. And I think one of the things that's a little bit hidden in the discussion is that promotions, I believe, are happening slightly more quickly than they used to. And so as you get a promotion, you typically get a raise. And that's not considered as part of this salary increase, which is really same person in the same role at the same company.
Without any growth. Without
any growth, promotion.
So the question that we were asking, if you stay employed at the same company for more than 2 years, over the course of your earnings potential career, you're going to earn less over that time by about 50%. So staying at one company, job hopping helps you make more money, is what this is saying. And it's because I think we see these low raises with bonuses when available, but if you job hop, somebody's going to be willing to pay you a little bit more, as we were just talking about. So I'm wondering if this is the best way to fight the war for talent. If what we have come to accept that you were just talking about, this is a little bit more flexible now. Employees got used to it during the Great Recession, but just because we're used to it, does that mean it's the best way to fight this war for talent?
It depends on how it's deployed, and that's where your compensation team needs to be more strategic and less tactical. I think one of the first points I would make here, though, is that we have to be careful not to draw conclusions from what happens in general being a cause of something. For example, the fact that people who stay in their jobs for more than 2 years means that they will likely earn less over their lifetime. It's not necessarily just because they stayed at their job, but it's also the kind of people who stay at their job, the kind of jobs that people are comfortable staying in forever, and that those people, even if they job hopped, may likely do less.
It's fair. Correlation versus causation.
Right, exactly. In the context of the war for talent, though, I think the idea is that the talent that you're fighting for are the people who are getting paid bonuses, and typically big bonuses, in an aggressive way, and that the people that you're not bonusing or giving, sort of a lower level bonus to are the ones that you would normally have been giving the 3-5% raise to. You're just breaking up the way you're doing it. You're doing it with a little more flexibility and a little more control leaving company results as sort of a primary thing, which becomes another issue that people often raise, is that companies are too beholden to shareholders, investors, or whatever, and that it's about what's the company's bottom line first, and then what's the employees' either salary or satisfaction or both. That's a secondary concern.
Yeah, I could rant about that all day. I've touched on that in this podcast before, that in business school I was educated on all that matters is shareholder value, right? And I think we've seen over the last decade, if not more, what goes wrong when that's the case. If you don't take all the stakeholders into account, and stakeholders can be local communities, stakeholders can be the employees, stakeholders can be a lot of different people that are affected by what your company does.
And there's also a reputational issue. It's like when, if you go too far in the direction of managing to corporate profits and not taking care of your employees, you get a reputation for being that kind of company, and therefore less attractive for new recruits, and your current employees are more likely to be looking for opportunities elsewhere, more likely to jump ship when that annual bonus doesn't come through.
And that's all out there on sites like Glassdoor now too, right?
Correct.
Everybody can see how you're perceived.
Before they come to work for you, they know what it's like to work there.
Yeah, before you even think about applying to a job, you can check it out. So let me ask this then, since what we're seeing is more companies go towards this more of a bonus incentivization. A bunch of recent news stories came out and said that some companies are trying to lottery those compensation plans. Now, previously with a bonus, it might be structured that if you reach this certain criteria, if you do these certain things, and the company does X, then you unlock your bonus. Or now what we're seeing is one of the examples here, a company specifically that I'm thinking of, there might be more, was holding a lottery. So if you do all these same things, then you get entered into a pool to maybe win something. What are your thoughts on that?
I have mixed feelings about it. I'll start by saying they should be lauded for trying different things and for thinking outside the box, which is pretty unusual for anything within the HR department. So good there. And at its simplest level, it sounds like an attempt at gamification of compensation, which is pretty cool. But it's clearly crossing the line into something that people are uncomfortable with, and at least the one case that I'm aware of, they backed off of. And part of it is, it's interesting. One thing is people take their compensation seriously, and and they don't want it to be a lottery type thing. They want it to be earned, not gifted. It's also, we'll get to it in a second, there's a difference between a bonus and an incentive. And the sort of simple version is a bonus is an after-the-fact gift. It's just dropped on you, Santa Claus handing you a check. And an incentive is much better vehicle for tying things to performance, where you lay out a set of goals and a set of rewards for meeting those goals. The idea of having a bonus based on a lottery is like 2 degrees removed from incentive. It's one is you don't know if you're going to get it, and 2 is it has nothing to do with what you're doing in the job. It's just, did your name get pulled out of a hat?
Plus, in the case that you're talking about with the lottery, it wasn't even all cash prizes, quote unquote.
Correct.
It was cars and trips and yada yada.
Right, and and those things can be very good for culture and environment and motivation, but it's not.
Don't give me a car in place of my compensation.
Exactly. Or if you're going to, make sure it's a nice car and it's one that I know whether or not I'm going to get it.
Yeah. Or let me pick the car because maybe that's
right.
Maybe I don't need one right now. If I do, maybe I need a particular type.
Right. And if you think about it, like these are the kinds of things that happen a lot in sales organizations. I don't mean companies focused on sales. I mean sales teams at any company where they will have a lot of promotional things, spiffs and awards, and we're going to give you a car, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and and that's, it's sort of a motivator and an energizer, but it's the idea of
the territory though of the nature of salespeople.
It is the nature of salespeople.
Whereas I could imagine that these types of things could be very demotivating for people who just don't work like that.
Right, and what happens? I mean, what would have happened in this situation is at some point, somebody who is a low performer, very well known to be not the right recipient of an award, is going to end up, driving home in a Tesla, and it's just going to drive everyone else crazy. No pun intended. And I think that's the kind of thing where, if you think it through, is like, what story you're telling, what message are your employees taking from these things, and what are you trying to get out of it? It's not. I guess my bottom line is, it's not really a compensation program. It's something else. It's a rewards program. It's a It's a culture program. Culture
right?
program.
Even in which I just made up a term there, I'm sure, but even in sales organizations, when they do have those kind of spiffs, it's typically on top of their commission. So
Correct.
you're guaranteed this certain amount in your salary. You're guaranteed to make this amount, however they're incentivized off of closing deals. And then on top of that, if you're one of the top performers, you get a new car, right?
Yep.
Great. Those are fantastic. Nothing wrong with those.
It's just like icing on the cake at that point.
Exactly, right. As opposed to, hey, you did your job. Previously, you would have gotten a bonus for this. Here's some keys to Dodge. No offense to Dodge.
They don't usually use those in sales incentives, but it is true. That is how it works. And again, back to Katie's point, the sales mindset, the hyper competitive, and always trying to outdo your coworkers, driving up to work every day in a BMW, that goes over well. That sends a message to the rest of the team, and everybody wants to be the guy that gets, or the woman who gets the car or whatever the big prize is next year or next cycle.
Yeah, it's the view of you're a successful professional, right?
Right.
It's the brand that you reflect.
Right.
The top salesperson, they drive the nice car, they have the great office, they have the good parking spot, whatever.
Exactly.
They didn't take a hit on their salary to get that car.
Also true.
Directly.
Right. Right, and but that actually takes us into a whole other category, which, when the IRS changed the rules on these things, is, you run into a lot of people who say, you know what, I'd rather have the money because I wouldn't have picked that car, to one of your earlier points.
Yeah.
And the tax implications are the same, whether it's a car or the cash value of the car. So, give me the choice. That's one perspective. There's another perspective, which is, giving people gifts, and we're, I think, well off topic here, but giving people gifts that are relevant or appreciated tends to also be a different kind of motivator. And then, I had a client once who didn't have enough money to pay bonuses, but wanted to give a lot of bonuses to their developers. And this was in the early 2000s. They gave everybody 50-inch flat screen TVs back when that was something, but it was way cheaper than what the bonuses the developers would have expected.
How did that go over?
It went over very well because people were excited about the gift.
Something that everybody wanted at the time, but nobody was investing
expensive
because they were still expensive.
Right.
Exactly.
And that also gives you some. That gives you some. I feel silly saying this, street cred. That gives you some. That gives you some. Employment brand value in the marketplace, because all of those people are going to go out and they're going to tell all their friends, is like, it was really cool working at this startup, and they give us big screen TVs, and people go, oh, where do you work? So. It actually...
It's paying it forward.
Yes.
Almost for the brand.
Yeah, and people don't usually do that when you get a bonus. They're like, oh, I got a bonus.
Yeah, you're not going to go tell all your friends,
yeah,
hey, I got $1,000, or...
or come over to my house and watch the game.
That's what you say. If it's the end of the year and
your
family's coming over for Christmas or for the holidays, or,
March Madness.
Or the Super Bowl a couple of weeks after that.
Right, yeah.
The NFL playoff, Super Bowl right after that. They're going to come over and be like, wait a minute, nobody else has these. How'd you get these? Oh, my employer.
Exactly.
Same with I don't know that a lot of companies do this anymore, but the old, I think of more maybe manufacturing companies years ago that would at the holidays give you your Christmas ham. Everyone at dinner is going to know that Christmas ham came from your company.
As the son-in-law of a SYS CEO, Cisco employee.
Oh, you probably got a lot of Christmas hams.
A lot of Christmas hams coming that way. That was one of their guarantees.
Well, we do it here. We do it to support, I think, a local organization, but we buy pies at Thanksgiving, and
that's right.
I made I was like, oh, these are my pies from work, Mom.
So maybe that's where we leave today, right? I mean, I know we covered it a little bit there, but I think Maybe what we're saying here is regardless of raise, bonus, or how you incentivize your employees and reward them, it's what's right for your culture. So maybe raises are you want people to stick around longer, you want to help them with their lifelong earnings, you want to be able to help them be more financially secure. Maybe that's the way you reward them, and maybe that's what's prized by your organization because of the types of people you employ.
Yeah, I think so. And I'll even add some more, which is I think as employers or people operating on behalf of employers, think about what it is you're trying to accomplish. And it doesn't have to be the same thing with everyone. And what is it that's the best way to communicate that, to do that? Sometimes bonuses are highly valuable and highly appropriate. Sometimes incentives are much better, driving certain behaviors. A mix is always good. And I would also say you don't have to do the same thing for everyone. And make sure you reward the people that you're truly in a war for. Your top performers should get paid top pay, and think about how it is you're going to achieve the company's goals, the company's strategies, and take care of your employees at the same time.
No, I think that's a fair point. It's what's best not only for your organization but for your individual people and how you want to best manage your talent. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Bill, for the time today. I think you gave us at least 2 new podcast ideas, so you're roping yourself back in for a future session. And so if you out there listening have any podcast suggestions for us, go on to iTunes, give us a comment. We're always there listening to what's going on. While you're there, give us that 5-star rating.
You can find us on Twitter, too, at Payfactors, and share what ideas you want to hear on the podcast there.
And if you want to buy Bill a drink and chat compensation with him, he will be at CompCon. That's www.compcon.com. We're hosting that in Boston in September. Hope to see everyone there, getting the community together to exchange ideas and learn something new.
And you can get your ticket for $99 with code COFFEE.